Hey everybody, let's do this. Yesterday I uploaded a video titled "Reluctant Living," and I was looking through some comments, and I found one by Shevkoch. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and which I thought was really interesting. Well, all of the comments are interesting. I love all your comments, but this one I think invites a video response. And here was the comment. By the way, the Reluctant Living video was about this circumstances where some of us find ourselves alive and in this world, and without having necessarily been asked to be here and not sure what to do. And the comment, here's the comment basically, not all of it, just the first part of it. What I find in life is, What I find hard in life is the fact that there are no comparably readily available guidelines on how to walk an individual path. That seems to be one reason for me why I experience the reluctance you talk about. It appears to be either A, fit into a culturally engineered structure for the masses, or B, stumble without a blueprint. And fold the paper up. I'm carrying my tripod with me. Got a big event at school to film today. I'm going to try to get all this situated before I begin walking. Gotta be at school in about 25 minutes, so I'll make it quick. Indeed, it does seem to often fall down to those two options, doesn't it? And what I thought I would do, and the question that you seem to pose there, is about the options and methodologies and suggestions that may be out there for those who are willing to basically trudge forth into the unknown, to wake up into this world and to open their eyes and say, hey, here I am, let's make something of it. It's not to say that those who are reluctant don't make anything of it, but they may be more willing to simply abide by the structures that are offered to them by their society and their culture. So if we're looking for blueprints for self-reliance, for lack of a better term, I'll offer a few suggestions from my own experience, and then I'm going to share a little anecdote from my life, and then I'm going to close with what I think about this whole issue. Okay, first of all, and if you're looking for examples about how to live an independent life, literature and the stories of humanity have many such examples that you can look to. Two of my favorites are from relatively contemporary sources, and one not so contemporary, back in the 19th century, would be my favorite, Henry David Thoreau. You're probably familiar with his work and his description of his life in the woods, his 2-year sojourn among the trees, and especially if you in the book Walden, or Life in the Woods. And if you read that book, and especially the chapters on walking and on solitude, you'll get a lot of beautiful, poetic, and amazing descriptions of his philosophy about living such a life and bucking the trends. Especially moving to me were those passages where he describes he lived a mile from the center of Concord, Massachusetts. His cabin was out in the woods, and his description of walking late at night without any light under moonless sky, completely dark, just feeling the ground with his feet, trudging through the forest. And remember, these were wild forests back then. These were no tamed glades. And walking through the forest to find his way back to his cabin at night, and the way that he was basically released and untethered from the civilized elements beyond where he came from in the village. And that word untethered is going to make its way to the title of this video. So that's one example. Another, from even more recent, comes from probably my favorite author of all in terms of just sheer writing prowess, and that would be John Steinbeck. John Steinbeck wrote 2 books basically tackling this subject in a way. The first was Cannery Row, in which we were introduced to Mac and the boys, a couple of vagrants that lived on the waterfront there, and befriended a marine biologist named Doc, who had a great influence, and who was actually based on a real character in Steinbeck's life. Mac and the boys basically were a confederacy of free souls. And the way that they lived their lives, their philosophies, their tongue-in-cheek answers to things, the way that they did things, their bumblings and mess-ups that they caused were all very illustrative of life distracted away from the mainstream. And I use the word distracted because I do think that it is often there is something distracting us away from it, and that intrigues us and interests, like a moth to a light some ways. But I diverge. So check out Cannery Row and its sequel, Sweet Thursday. If you like adventure books and good writing, and especially something that, to me, the best authors are those who, when they're in their writing, you can sense something of their soul and their spirit and their philosophy. That really means a lot to me, to do that. And Steinbeck's stuff is filled with that. Of course, Grapes of Wrath also, not quite on the subject there, but Grapes of Wrath is also one that's very moving of his works. I've kept a copy of the Grapes of Wrath on my bedside for several decades. I open it and read chapter 1 from time to time when I need to be moved emotionally. Amazing. Chapter 1 and chapter 2. Anyway, I get totally off point now. Back on topic. Now I've given you a couple of examples of literature where basically essays where and Thoreau's what is it called? He's got another essay. I'm confusing myself. Let me get back on track. Okay, I've given you a couple of examples of literature and essays where the independent life is described. Let me give you a story now from my own experience that I think may help illustrate things from my own point of view. Off the coast, taking out of Southern California, off the coast of Santa Barbara, there are mesas and bluffs that run all up the coast to Vandenberg Air Force Base. And when I was living in Santa Barbara, I would spend a lot of my free time exploring underwater there. Not scuba diving, though I did like to scuba dive. I preferred to free dive, which is basically to have a mask and snorkel and fins and have my spear gun, which I rarely use. What is the bug doing? What are you doing there? What's up there? Pretty bug. And I would wander up and down, hike the coast there. I had a little one-strap backpack that would carry over my shoulder with my mask, snorkel, and fins in there. Carry my spear gun, and wander around exploring the texture and depths in the near shore there. It was really an amazing part of my experience for me in those years that I lived in Santa Barbara. And one year, I remember in the summertime, walking along the beach and spotting quite a ways offshore a ripple on the surface of the water, which indicated that there was a rock below, where I didn't think there was a reef. I didn't even think there was not even a kelp bed nearby. So usually the seaweed can give you an indication of a rocky bottom. So I donned my gear and swam out and found basically a stratified, textured set of rock ledges leading out to a sand, to the open sand. Now, when you left the rocky shore there, it eventually became just the sand stretching off into the abyss, into the channel depths there. And I found the sand, and I continued on because I knew there was something out there that was causing that ripple. I got out and I found this huge, massive rock laying in about 10 meters of water. And this rock was immense, and it was like an island an island out in the sand there and underwater. And the thing had a huge crack down the middle. And I was able to I was a breath hold diver then. I could hold my breath for, more than 3 minutes if I hyperventilated properly beforehand. So I would rest on the surface, went down and explored, and I found this giant crack. And I got inside and I wedged myself into that crack, because I was hunting fish, even though I never shot it. Wedged myself into this thing, My body had these giant fins, and I kind of stick myself in there, and kind of jam myself in this rock so my buoyancy wouldn't take myself up, with my gun aimed out through the crack, right into the open water out there. And I was hoping for calico bass to swim by and plug them. And they did. They would come by, swim by, and they would stop, and they would eyeball me with those one eye looking at me like this. Somehow they knew that I was too weak-minded to shoot them, and I never did. They were just too beautiful. I would just sit there and admire the view. After several minutes, I'd go up and replenish my air supply, hyperventilate, come back down, and start the whole process over. Very meditative. It was my little spot, my little crack, my little island out there. Now, sometimes when I'm sitting there, I could look out through my little crack, my little safe sanctuary. I mean, it really felt safe in there. And there's great whites out there. There's whales, that come by. I mean, a whale's not going to hurt you necessarily, but it was still spooky to see them swimming by sometimes. And there were creatures out there. There were sea lions and the like that would spook you, and they'd come bite your fin. Yeah, sea lions would come nibble on my fin sometimes and pull on it. Anyway, wedged in my crack there, I felt nice and safe. And I would look out, and I could could see out in the haziness out there, the open water, what we call in freediving, in the freediving world, the deep blue, or what would they call it? The open blue. I'm forgetting, something blue, and way out there. And one day I remember I said, "To heck with this," and I wedged myself out, and I took off, left out through the crack there, out into the deep water. And I just went propelling myself along the surface with my big giant fins, gentle casual strokes, vroom, 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 deeper and deeper until the bottom below, which was a sandy haze, disappeared, and all I could see was shafts of light descending down into the deeper water. And it just got deeper and deeper. And I knew there was boat traffic, rare to see sometimes, but you could hear the boats coming, although you could never know where they were coming from because sound moves faster underwater. So I'd pop my head up, find a boat, and get out of its way. I don't remember any boats that particular day, and I just went deeper and deeper, further and further, and I was scared. My heart was a pitter-patter, but I was after the experience of finding what was out there, and it had to be alone. I had done the same thing with my friend Glenn Peck before. Again, I had swim out as far as you can. Yeah, that's a smart idea. What about swimming back? And we had a great. That was more of a two boys on a lark adventure. This was an individual sojourn into basically the wilds of the sea. And I remember going out there into that deep water and finally stopping and resting on the surface there, looking down into the shimmering depths with the light slanting down into the blue down there. It was deep. It wasn't super deep, but it was deep. I couldn't see the bottom anymore. And I hung there in that basically that cloudless sky of water for the longest time and just soaked it all up. Now, with that story in mind, I come to the point that I wanted to make in this video, and I'm sorry it's been a rambling, roundabout way to get here. The point I want to make in the answer to the question about, how to, in my opinion, what could be, if I was to offer a guide for pushing up, for those who want to push out, find themselves plunking down here in life and want to push out into life, what's the guide to do that? I've got a general purpose suggestion, a monkey wrench, so to speak, for that I think, it's helped me. And that's the concept of being untethered. Now, what I mean by untethered is that you are disconnected from the security, from the safety lines that protect you and comfort you and keep you dry and warm and protected, and see you through to the end of your days in a safe fashion, in a safe and comfortable manner. Untethered means being willing to push away from the known into the unknown and explore and discover what's out there, at risk and at peril of early death, dismemberment, injury, madness, all of those things. Because madness is indeed one of the things that can happen. To basically say, I'm here and I'm going to look around, and I'm willing to take the risks that come with that. Now, the reason I think that that's a beneficial way of looking at it is that it crosses all cultures. Whether you're in comments, other people in comments mentioned how Japan is with its very with rule-based structured organization is a harder place for the independent spirit to get by than in a place like, for example, the United States, where freedom is go your own way is the operational is basically how we operate, and that's true. But when it comes to the idea of being untethered, you can untether yourself from any safety mechanism, from any, you're bobbing around in the sea and you're connected to a little buoy there. You can untether yourself from any of them, in any case. And in some ways, living in a place like Japan makes the process a little easier in some ways, because to venture away from the safety zone is a shorter distance in a place like Japan than it would be in, for example, the United States, where to really push away, sometimes you need to really disconnect from a lot of ties and do something like that one young fella did in that novel Into the Wild. He ended up dead, sadly, in that case. Venturing off into leaving life behind, all the structures of life behind, to adventure wildly in life. That sometimes is more dangerous and a greater consequence than in Japan, where you simply wearing a short sleeve shirt when you're not supposed to, is almost an act of rebellion. So untethering oneself, basically cutting the bounds, the things that bind you to the structures of your society, can be a shortcut and a way of finding this mystery that's out there. Now, the key element there is the willingness, not the untethering itself, but the willingness to accept the risks and the dangers, and the willingness to accept the eyes that are, the looking askance you, the glances that people you give, the complaints from family and friends that may come. That is what basically needs to be overcome in order to do that. And again, it can be done in any culture. So being untethered, being unbound, is, I think, a key element in living such a life. Now I'll leave you with a final example of this whole process. Of one more thing to read if you're interested. If you're looking for, what the heck is that crow doing? What is that? Is that a crow up there on the wires? There's a crow on the wires. What are you doing up there? Watch out! That's electrocuted. Okay, there's one last bit of knowledge of human knowledge that I'll share with you that I think might help, and that is that comes from my own country. Basically the preamble, the Declaration of Independence, not the whole thing, the preamble and the conclusion of the Declaration of Independence, where we have and it's embarrassing to say this because I'm an American and I'm not trying to just say just because that's my country's statement of basically untethering itself from the structured world and going off on its own. But that's exactly what it is, and it's worded so perfectly. John Hancock did such an incredible job of summarizing his nation's intent to strike out on their own, and the reasons why they would do that, and how it would take a manly, dedicated spirit to do this, and the courage and a willingness to risk and lose all. So have a read at the Declaration. If you haven't read it before, have a read at the Declaration of Independence. You can, if you want, you can skip all the stuff in the middle, which is very relevant to that particular case. It's mainly the top, stuff at the top and the stuff at the bottom, which is, I think, could be applied to anyone in any circumstance. Anyone who's looking for reinforcement and guidance and having the courage to move alone out and break the bonds and find their way on their own. Thanks for hanging with me for a little bit while I walk to work and talk about the steps to become free. Although we can never be totally free, given our biological nature. We need each other in so many ways. If we try to be completely free, we'll end up becoming a different animal altogether. Okay, take care everybody. Have a great day. Make it a wonderful one.